Welcome to New Europe Studios, where you can watch us make the news. Today I'm speaking with Lizbeth Goodman from the Creative Technology Innovation based in Dublin. Could you tell us a little bit more about this?
I am delighted to. I work at University College Dublin in Ireland, and I run something there called the SMARTlab Centre and an Inclusive Design Research Institute. But just to jump back, because perhaps not everyone is familiar with the term Creative Technology Innovation, and that would be because I made it up when I was first given a personal chair in London some 10 years ago. And the reason is that for most of the needs of society now and in the future, we need mobile technologies, personalized technologies, and technologies that scaffold the real world in which we live and the world which we're inventing. Those are often created not only by industry or by technology teams, but by artists and social policy people and anthropologists, and a range of people from many disciplines working together to create technology tools that are truly useful. So I wanted to move away from that term ICT, which kind of summons the image of a big, clunky, deep, old computer chained to a desk with humans having to lean over in a very uncomfortable and aerodynamic way, injuring their bodies in order to deal with data, to a world in which we create personalized, mobile, wearable, and other technologies which support the way that we live and allow us to develop new and more creative and engaging ways of living.
That's great. I mean, the way that you describe that as the creative technology innovation, it's more about what we can do with the technology rather than what we've previously done, that is concentrate on the technology itself.
Exactly.
I mean, from these labs of yours, have you got any examples of projects that you're working on which people might find of interest?
Many. But I'd say, so in all of our work, it is exactly what you said. It's never technology development for its own sake, but it's social enterprise and or social community building projects and health and well-being projects and education projects that utilize or invent new technologies because they're truly needed, perhaps only by one person if it's an extreme health situation, or perhaps by many millions of people in the developing world, or with an educational need. So to give examples, one of my favorites and one of the ones we've just given out some awards for is an integrated dance, music and technology project for people who have no physical movement. So people with cerebral palsy or acquired brain injury or other traumatic injury or other conditions which affect voluntary mobility. For many people, even some arising from stroke or what's called locked-in syndrome, the eyes often, though not always, can be used as an interface. So one of my colleagues, Dr. McDonaghan, has developed some really creative, and I have to say that he's the thinker, the special educational needs thinker and technology developer, but he worked with musicians, dancers, and this interdisciplinary group of people to create a technology that would enable, in this particular case, in the project we just worked on, to enable a young man who had been stabbed and lost all movement from the neck down to not only play guitar, but play a real guitar using eye control. So not only play a digital guitar, which is a triumph enough for someone who hasn't been able to communicate, but then to play a real guitar.
I mean,
so
that just sounds absolutely incredible. Because
it is incredible.
And it seems that perhaps doing this through a university, but how can I put this, commercially, to do something that revolutionary for a very small number of people,
exactly,
couldn't be done, but you're doing this, and what a change that must make to someone.
And the issue there is that the creative example is the kind of extreme user example that shows why people are so motivated and so engaged to use technologies as a communicative platform, whether it's for speech synthesis or whatever. But many people then are able to return to work. So what Mick and others have been developing is really a skills for the next generation and skills for our generation who've lost the ability to move. You can go back to work as a web designer if you can move your eyes and if you have these particular technologies. So there are real commercial and economic reasons to be utilizing these technologies more. And only a few years ago it would have been very difficult. These systems are expensive. But what Mick and others on the team have been doing is kind of bringing down the price point by showing the many ways in which these tools can be used and the motivation and the community regeneration that happens around the user so that there's both economic, creative, cultural, and kind of intellectual development arising from this single tool.
But I mean, just as we go on, because I mean, I know one of the things that you're known for is something called inclusive design, which is clearly is an example of. But I would say if you've got various of these kind of technologies that you give to people, there's one thing you can always say about technology is that people use it in ways you would never imagine.
Absolutely.
So you're creating a whole series of things which are going to be then taken up by the people and used in different ways.
Exactly. And if we want to link some of that work to the EU-Africa collaborations, which we're here and participating in, what we found many years ago in Morocco, we were doing an interactive film project and giving away digital cameras, but what we found when we gave away the digital cameras and a very simple interface before iMovie or any of those tools existed, was that the stories that came back to me in particular from the women's community, many of them were of abuse that was not going to be spoken of. Unless there was a tool in which anonymously and pictorially, without ever having to speak the words or write them down, unless that tool had been provided, the stories would not have come to us, and those stories helped us found a charity called Safety Net, which is a global anti-domestic violence program. But it started from the amazing, strong women in Morocco who did exactly what you said. They took a tool intended for interactive Shakespeare, and they made it the tool for what they needed. And out of that grew a whole set of projects over the past 15 years, developing other kinds of technology tools. So people always use a tool for what they actually need. And our job is to observe that and facilitate agile, personalizable tools that can be used for things we can't even imagine yet.
Okay. I mean, you're also here, I mean, you're talking about African and EU innovation, particularly in science, and we'll be talking to other people on this subject. But with this ideas about inclusive design, creative technology innovation, and so you've got a clear message of what you're wanting from the next Commission and the next European Parliament.
Yes, indeed we do. And it's a large team of collaborators from many different institutions and industry partners, large and small, and civil society. I'll tell you about the project in a minute, but the concept of inclusive design is fairly new to Europe. In North America, in particular in Canada, the inclusive design concept took off a number of years ago. Professor Jutta Treviranus developed it. It's an extension of the concept of universal design, the concept from engineering, whereby if you want to design a product, say a mobile phone, you would, if in a universal design concept, you would think of all your extreme users. The people who can't hold it still, the people who can't see it, the people who don't have dexterity to use number pad, etc. You design with those extreme users in need to make sure you have the most useful product that will also sell the most in terms of industry need. Inclusive design just takes a different ethical stance on that. It's not about the consumer market for the tools or methods that we develop. It's about co-designing collaboratively in communities across disciplines the tools, techniques, technologies, and methodologies that we will need to have a more inclusive society. So the assumption is not that individual people are somehow broken or damaged, whether by accident or by health, well-being, disability, or location in a rural environment, or location in an underdeveloped part of the world economy. No one is themselves isolated or damaged or in need. In an inclusive design model, it is our need, our collective need as citizens of the world, to better design, to better co-design the tools that will facilitate free communication and collaboration by everyone. So it removes the onus from the person as having a problem, political, global, geographical or physical, and it puts the onus on all of us as developers and creative collaborators to imagine a better society where everyone is included and provided for, and then to develop tools for all of the world's citizens. So that's the model.
But I mean, this is a big thing for Europe and for the European Union.
It's a paradigm shift.
And those of us who know people who are disabled or housebound have known that this is an incredibly isolating experience that not only cuts people off, it frankly devalues their lives.
Exactly.
And that's got to stop.
And often it's not only people with disabilities who perhaps can't speak, but also the growing world population of our elderly citizens who hold a world of wisdom knowledge from the past and knowledge of other ways of knowing from the wisdom of various tribes and cultures that need to be shared in this inclusive design model, because without all that world wisdom, we can't design tools that will last and endure. And sustainability in the future may not be about the fanciest tech that does the most. It may be about how we survive as humans, protecting and caring for each other in other ways. And that leads to the project.
Right.
So I do have an idea for a project been working on for about a year and a half now.
Okay.
Declan Karan from the ISC is collaborating, and a number of the people you'll meet today are collaborating, 100 Year Starship and the personalized medicine team. The idea is a roadmap for responsible open innovation to gather cross-sectorally not only university research communities and industry large and small and government and civil society, but also communities of the world's people who are often underrepresented, and bring them in to co-design a new Europe, a new world in terms of education systems, health systems and economic systems, and to use our research to fuel that by planning 6 lanes of a superhighway.
Okay.
And giving them each a kind of set of leadership, thought leadership, that can rotate and change in a democratic way, but that will lead to a joint achievement at the end of a longitudinal project, which will look at open innovation strategies, so that everyone who joins the project can take part in this pre-competitive development of research tools and IP and ideas, but also build upon the results for future. So to be concrete, we call it the roadmap to responsible open innovation, and the lanes are gender inclusion, which we already know Europe is taking very seriously now, but we want to almost mandate the inclusion of women, and not just those of us who are professors in universities, all the world's women with all of their knowledges into the framework program and into therefore the design of our next generation of tools and ideas. One lane is around diaspora, not only around the economic inward and outward investment of diaspora communities, but also the cultural diaspora, the linguistic diaspora, the diaspora of value systems of humans, which also move around the world in interesting ways when people move around the world and come back. One lane is around personalized health and the connected health agendas, which are very important. Another is around education and what I like to call empathetic education. And what I'd love to see is some kind of a program that mandated at least consideration of the inclusion of empathy as a core value, as a core discipline or curriculum to be taught alongside literacy and numeracy, so that we would, and not everyone has empathy and various disabilities mitigate against the inclusion of everyone, but we would develop tools that would enhance empathetic communication within the education system, and I mean from nursery on to lifelong learning in every level of our education system. Another very important lane would be climate change and sustainability, and the final lane is what I call Hippocratic Innovation, which means innovation that not only starts from existing tools and methods and adds value, whether commercially or technologically or educationally, philosophically, intellectually, but that starts with the basic premise that the medical doctor's oath starts with, which is the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. And if we started with innovation platforms that were all meant to add value to all of those other lanes, but that also started from the premise of we won't do harm ecologically, educationally, in terms of the lack of inclusion of women, and we built that into the system as a core value, we would have 6 lanes leading along what I think could be a really flagship project to bring together all the other core competencies of Europe and the world, and lead to a longitudinal result which is accelerated in terms of development, because we're passing the baton between the lanes. We're integrating our knowledge and adding adding more capacity to all of those lanes.
Well, that's great. I mean, that sounds like such a fascinating project, because it's global, it brings in everyone. Gender, we know about gender, but a global program has to bring in parts of the world that are underrepresented.
Exactly.
And also I found interesting is your reference to empathy, because I know, for example, Dr. Jane Goodall, the scientist, and also the theologian Karen Armstrong, have all said that empathy, the ability to to emphasise with another human being is absolutely central to the human experience.
Exactly.
And now what you're doing is putting this into the centre of innovation and into the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ms. Goodman, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.